We've completed week 2 of our 30-day grid down cooking challenge, and I think we've found our new groove. Hi, I'm Jonathan.
And Kylene Jones, and we are the Provident Preppers. Week 2 of our 30-day grid down cooking challenge went significantly better than week 1. I think we just might be getting the hang of this.
Check out what we discovered this week. This is our report of week 2 of our 30-day grid down cooking challenge, and I think we've found our groove.
Ah, yes, our little tiff that we had last week. To all of those who voted with me, thank you, but you are far and few in between.
And to all of those who voted for me, you're so right.
Yeah, I'm a sore loser. And all that actually became a moot point because Jonathan suddenly remembered the answer.
We have this power bank and these solar panels, and we were able to run the magic heat using alternative energy. So it was a good thing overall.
And he actually did some experimenting running the refrigerator with this. So it was a good thing. But I still am a sore loser.
She'll get over it.
You hope. I learned something incredible this week. Did you know that it takes less time to pop popcorn on a butane stove than it does to pop it in the microwave? The butane stove heats it up so quickly. I just put some coconut oil in there, put the popcorn in, and within like 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes, it's all popped and ready to go. And the amount that I can pop is more than what's in the microwave. So I actually save time. And it tastes better than microwave popcorn because I've got the coconut oil, the popcorn, and then that powdered pink Himalayan salt. It's just an incredible flavor combination. The girls' favorite study food, actually.
Because we have no toaster, we had to get creative, and we toasted our bread on a little skillet on the butane stove.
Now, I can cook pancakes for breakfast for just the 5 of us on the butane stove, and the kids love it. This is sourdough pancakes. But when we have more people, this just doesn't work for us.
When the grandkids came on Friday night, we decided to cook this big meal. This had to move out to the wood-burning stove, and it worked out really well. The pancakes were being cooked and then kept warm in the oven, the hash browns, the bacon. And for the one child that didn't care for breakfast for dinner, there was a pot of leftover soup warming on the stove.
And the girls are in newsies, which meant that I needed to dye a costume. And as you can see, the butane stove did a really good job. Retained heat cooking is a fantastic way to extend your fuel supply. We are going through a lot of butane and it's very expensive. So while it's convenient, it is truly not sustainable. In order to conserve fuel, I have brought the soup up to a big rolling boil, and then we just tucked it into this Wonder oven and made sure that there was no extra air, put the pillow on top, and then I've surrounded it with an additional blanket because that pot of soup was really big for that pillow, and I was a little bit concerned that we didn't have quite enough insulation. It's tucked in there and set on the counter awaiting dinner. And then several hours later,
there's our soup, and you can see it was 174 degrees, which is well above the safe food temperature, and it was delicious.
Because we can't use the microwave, warming up leftovers means we're doing it either on the butane stove or with the safe heat. Both of them work really well. In fact, I think I like the safe heat better because it tends to not scorch. If you leave that butane stove at all, it's going to scorch.
Here's Benjamin cooking hash browns, eggs, and bacon.
And I am falling in love with the HERC oven. Cooking with these candles, it's just really cool. The problem with the HERC oven is it doesn't achieve really high temperatures, but that's okay because that means that I'm not going to burn anything like the cinnamon rolls. But here we're baking the muffins in the HERC oven. It's a little bit small, and so in the normal oven I would have cooked 2 pans of muffins at the same time, and I'm only able to do 1 here, but it still has a great final end product. Macaroni and cheese for the grandkids on the butane stove.
Here's a breakfast of steel-cut oats. This time I actually brought the water to a boil, added the ingredients, put the lid on, and tucked it away in the thermal cooker, and it turned out amazingly well.
It turned out much better than when you hadn't brought it back up to a boil. And for this herb tea addict, I am constantly heating up my water using the safe heat, which is just a fantastic way to do it. And a loaf of homemade bread being put into the wood-burning stove. And it won't burn. This bread doesn't burn like this because it's in the Dutch oven. It creates this nice little oven within an oven and helps it regulate the temperature and not burn. In the HERC oven, I made homemade pizza. And homemade pizza is always going to work better in a hot oven, and the HERC oven just doesn't reach that temperature. But I put a layer of dough in the 9x13 pan, and I let that cook until it looked like it was just about done. And I added the sauce and the cheese, and it was a huge hit with the kids. I'm a huge fan of pineapple fajitas. I was a little bit concerned that I wouldn't be able to pull this off using the wood-burning stove. It turned out great. I put the tortillas in the Dutch oven that's in the bottom there to keep them warm, and I browned the chicken in the cast iron skillet on the left-hand side. Once it was done, I put it into the Dutch oven that's sitting there in the center, and then I transferred the pineapple and the vegetables into the cast iron skillet and sautéed them until they were just right and added them to the meat. And they all stayed nice and warm in that Dutch oven in the center until we served it.
And it was really good.
It was good.
It is amazing that in the middle of November, we can still be cooking in the solar oven, and it still works quite well. It's not getting quite as warm. Our UV index is only hovering around 3, maybe 4, but we're still getting enough heat to do some good cooking.
Now, if you look at these cinnamon rolls, one of the great things is that the sun oven will not burn them. However, they just don't brown well. They'll brown in a sun oven when you have a higher UV, but with this one, they're just getting cooked. Breakfast on Sunday morning for that huge crowd. Of course, they wanted pancakes again. It seems to be the favorite for this week. Propane is such an incredible cooking fuel. It's just so easy to regulate that temperature.
And for our Sunday dinner, we were using the Bear River rocket stove to cook a roast and vegetables. And it was really kind of fun because we had the grandkids over, and I was a little concerned about them helping around that stove because that stove does get quite hot. But they did a great job of feeding those rockets. They just had so much fun putting the sticks in and making sure they kept that temperature right at about 375. So it was a good team effort, and it worked out really well.
When I made my white chicken chili, I sautéed the onions and the peppers and the chicken on the propane stove because it's really easy for me to regulate that heat and make sure that I could cook it well. And then I transferred it to the top of the Bear River rocket stove because all I needed it to do was to simmer the canned beans and other spices that I had added to the chicken. So that was a perfect place for it while we were baking the cinnamon roll.
And you can see we did it again.
Not
as bad this time, but those last 2 rows on the left got a little bit dark because that's where the heat comes up that side. So in the future, we'll probably slide that over a little bit, and it'll probably work out really well.
We'll see if I am brave enough to make cinnamon rolls again next week. The other thing that we did was once we took the cinnamon rolls out, we took the Dutch oven with the white chili in it and put it inside of the oven and quit feeding the rocket stove. We just let the heat that it had retained finish baking the white chili, and the chili was really good. And grandkids means that grandma's got to make more treats.
This chocolate bundt cake turned out really, really well. Again, the UV index was only at 3 and outside temperature was about 50 to 55. It baked at about 275 degrees, but as you can see, it turned out really, really well.
And that's one of the reasons why I like to use the Bunt pan, because even if it cooks really slowly, once I flip it out, it's beautiful.
Now for the Inconvenience Report.
I have been inconvenienced.
But it's turned out really well.
And sometimes we're just choosing not to eat because of the pain factor involved. And other times we eat it cold or eat something that doesn't have to be cooked, like a bowl of cold cereal.
And to some extent, we've changed our menu to accommodate the simpler cooking options. But overall, it's turning out really well. We're having some fun with these devices, and we're learning some great things that we want to learn now, as opposed to somewhere down the road when it may not be quite as convenient. And of course, we have to have the safety report, because safety truly is one of the most important things. We have to make sure that we do what we do safely. And I am proud to say that our carbon monoxide alarm never went off 0.
However, he was the cause of a very difficult morning.
Yes. We did have a little bit of trouble with our wood-burning stove. And again, this is something that we learn now as opposed to later. We did have some smoke leaking out of one of the burner plates, and we're still trying to resolve that completely. It did create for some smoky conditions, especially in the solarium, but a little bit in the house as well.
A little bit in the house. So he gets up early and makes breakfast for all of us. He's fantastic that way. But as we're all coming out, the house is fill with smoke. And so we had to open the windows and put a fan in the window to kind of air it out a little bit. So we're all eating this nice hot breakfast he made while we're freezing to death. It's true.
Everybody survived.
Yes, we did.
Here's our fuel usage report, and it shows the number of devices that we used and how often we used them. As you can see on the bottom line there, we used about a fourth of our rack of firewood, about 2 3/4 buckets of sticks of kindling for the Bear River rocket stove. We used 4 cans of butane, a partial bottle of propane, and the solar oven, which I totally love. We love that free unlimited fuel source. We used a partial can of the safe heat. We used about 20 of the tea lights for the little candle oven, and again the retained heat cooking we used a couple of times, and it worked out really well. We invite you to Google the providentprepper.org to see the basis for these videos and this challenge, the 30-day Grid Down Emergency Cooking Challenge.
Check out some of our other YouTube videos, creating a 3-month food supply and emergency fuel storage. Both of those could come in really handy in a real grid down situation.
We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and to click the bell so that you'll get notifications.
As you can see, we're getting the hang of cooking with these devices and burning less food. I think it's time that we add some new alternative cooking devices to our arsenal. Next week just might get a little bit exciting.
And now for the question of the day. What are your favorite ways to cook during a power outage? Comment below. And thanks for being part of the solution.